This is the all-power TirePro digital tire pressure gauge. Um, and it's not often I do reviews for products that I get that really concern me with their design and how they work. And this particular tire gauge actually does. And I'll explain why in a minute. But I initially received this particular tire gauge, or actually one just like it, sent to me that appeared to be defective. This has a blue light on the display here, and I'll show you that in a minute, and also on the air nozzle here that lights up when you're using it. And the initial one that I received flickered and appeared to have a short. It did measure tire pressure, and I'll get into that as well in a second. And I used the same method for that particular gauge as I did this replacement, which was sent to me as well. But the seller was great. They did respond quickly and sent me this replacement so I could test. And I had really high hopes for a digital tire gauge, as I've always had and hated the standard analog type, which typically are the stick type that I've used. But unfortunately for me, this digital gauge, both the first and the second, doesn't live up to my expectations at all. This second one does not appear to have the wiring problem at all. I'll turn it on here. There's the power button. As it lights up like it's supposed to, there you can see the display. Sorry about the reflection of the light there, but you can see the digital display. Let me try to get that a little closer so maybe the light. There you go. And you can change the different measurement types, the PSA, bar, or KPA, just by pushing the power button here. And you can hold the button a few seconds and it'll turn off just like that as well. And I like the light, the blue light for the display and the tire stand make it easy to see, when you're using it. And unfortunately, this light is probably the best feature for this gauge. I initially tested this gauge on 2 different tires on 2 different cars. One was a SUV, one is a regular passenger 4-door car, and I used 3 different standard analog gauges. I used 2 stick gauges, one a pretty good quality one, I would say, one an average quality, and then one of, that came with my air compressor, which is the round gauge gun style type of tire pressure monitor. And one of the stick gauges was new, the other one a little older. All 3 of my gauges read the same with both, read the same with both tires in terms of they were consistently reading. This consistently was 2 to 3 pounds difference on my SUV tire, with it reading 35 to 36 pounds on my analog gauges and 33 on the digital gauges. It also consistently was between 3.5 to 4 pounds difference on the car tires, reading 32 pounds on my gauges, my analog gauges, and 28 pounds on the digital. I repeated this test several times with the same results because I wanted to make sure I was sure of, that my analog gauges weren't reading incorrectly. Now, to be sure of my results, I also went the next day and tested this gauge on a friend's vehicle, which has tire pressure sensors that display the PSI on the dash of each tire as a feature. I don't have that included in the video. My friend wasn't comfortable with me videoing that, but that's okay. And the readings differed by 3 pounds on each tire from what this digital gauge read, which was 3 pounds less consistently on every tire, all 4 tires I checked. I also gave this gauge to a different friend, who also tested it on, his car, which also has digital tire pressure sensors built into his car, and the readings with this gauge indicated a 2 to 3 pound difference on each tire. Now, and granted, digital gauges are supposed to be more accurate than analog ones, and when I have consistent readings among 3 analog gauges and a tire pressure gauge and a digital tire pressure gauge, not only with one car but 2 cars, with someone else trying to gauge, leads me to believe that this particular tire gauge here and the other one I tried are not accurate, and that there's an issue possibly with calibration of these digital gauges. The instructions indicate with this that this should be accurate within 1 psi, but that's not appear to be the case, and there's no way on here that I see that you could calibrate this gauge if it's off. So that's a problem as well. But that's not, I mean, inaccuracy, of course, is a big problem, but that's not the only issue this gauge has. In addition to the tire gauges and accuracy, there's some design issues with this. For one, it has, the measuring, tire measuring sticks, which are a nice addition. I like it. But because of the size of this gauge and the position of where these tire tread gauges are, it's really impossible to measure the tread under the fender of most cars. So you have to measure the tread of the back tires for sure at the bottom of the tire, or turn your front wheels out. That shouldn't be necessary for something like this, as a penny will do the same thing as what these tire measuring tread addition on this tire gauge does. So it makes it a bit inconvenient. Now, the casing of this is a cheap, flimsy feeling plastic. The head turns on this, but when I turn the head, it's kind of rough, and also you can see it's hard to see in the camera, but you can see the plastic flecks on the edges of the casing. So it's, a sturdier casing should be, this tire gauge should be made out of a heavier gauge silicone, plastic, or even metal, instead of the plastic casing that seems to be kind of lightweight that it uses. The gauge itself also feels awkward in the hand. It really should have a more ergonomic hand design, I think. In addition to that, the nozzle here for the air part is plastic. I think that should be metal, and because most likely this plastic will crack and break. And aside from that, in addition, this nozzle is way too short, and it's difficult to use on some of the car tires I tried. It feels awkward even when you're using the swivel. A longer nozzle with this, or a short hose attached to this to make this easier to use and less awkward. So those are issues. This also has requires, and I'll take the battery, 5 LR44's watch-style batteries in the back of this, which seems a bit crazy for just a tire pressure gauge. It does have an auto shut-off, though, I guess, if that means anything. But overall, I mean, the inaccurate, flimsy design and other issues keep me from really rating this highly. Mainly, I mean, the biggie, of course, is being accurate. And to me, there's a better quality, more accurate, easy-to-use tire gauges out there that are cheaper than this $20 device. I mean, I've seen digital tire gauges for half this price that have a lot better design to them. And a 4-pound difference is just too much when it comes to my tires personally. And for $20, I really expect this to be a sturdy, accurate, easy-to-use tire gauge. And unfortunately, this isn't it. I give this gauge 1 star. I have a couple standard gauges, stick gauges here, tire gauges, along with the digital tire gauge. I've also tested this with a air compressor gauge as well, which is a little too loud for me to video and do that. But all the readings for these 2 gauges here and the stick and the air compressor gauge were consistently the same. I'm going to do a test here with this gauge to kind of show you the accuracy. It's a little hard to see with the light, but well, if I can get the light to read here. There we go. There you see it says 35. Sorry, it's a little blurry. But this gauge says 35. I'm going to use a separate stick gauge for this tire. Whoops, let me do that again. And this one also, well, it's a little hard to see, sorry. Also reads consistently at 35 pounds. It's a little hard to see. You can see the 30 there, but it's right at 35 pounds. Now, I'm going to show you this one as well here. Number one, it's kind of hard to deal with getting on the tire because of the short stem. And I'll show you the reading. As you can see, it says 33 pounds, whereas the other gauges read between 35 and 36 pounds. But I've also gotten readings as inaccurate as 4 pounds off on my other tire. It shows 28 pounds consistently on my car tire. And the two analog sticks, in addition to my air compressor, also reads consistently 32 pounds.